Hello everyone! So today I'd like to talk about one of my favorite cartoons, The Fairly Oddparents. More specifically, an episode from season 5 titled It's a Wishful Life. This episode has always rubbed me the wrong way, and I wanted to express why that is. I do genuinely believe that this episode was aiming to teach a valuable lesson to kids, but unfortunately the execution was abhorrent. For years, I questioned if, perhaps, I was being a tad dramatic, and if to the average viewer, the episode was actually better than I believed. After all, I was a kid when I first watched the show, so I rewatched the episode repeatedly now that I'm an adult to see if my feelings would change, but every rewatch just reinforced the detest I felt for this episode. Still, I could just be dramatic and biased, so I had a couple friends watch the show to see what they think. When the episode was over, I asked for their thoughts, and to my surprise, everyone said that the episode was depressing. One friend said that it was actually a little hard to watch, so now I can say with absolute certainty that this episode is atrocious. The fact that this episode even aired on Nickelodeon is shocking to say the least. Grown adults watched this episode and found it difficult to sit through due to the mature subject matter, but somehow this episode managed to find its way on a children's show. Not because the episode was deeply insightful or useful for teaching a moral virtue. People should do good deeds because it's the right thing to do, not in the pursuit of moral validation or attention. I do believe this is a good lesson to teach, but unfortunately the way the show writers went about teaching this lesson was poorly executed. So, in this video, I'll explain why I despise this episode, why it's left such an impression on me over the years, and why I believe this episode contributed to the start of some troublesome thoughts for the young audience watching at the time. By asking the viewers, mostly children mind you, to ask if their existence is a burden to those around them. I promise I'm not exaggerating when I say this episode is likely much worse than you remember, which is saying something because if you're a fan of the show, I guarantee this episode stood out, and not in a good way. Now, the episode kicks off to a good start as viewers are shown a joyful Timmy Turner placing the finishing touches on the backdrop for the school play. Wanda reassures Timmy that painting the backdrop for the school play was really kind of him, and she assures him that Mr. Bickle is sure to love the kind gesture. Unfortunately, this was far from the case. The moment Mr. Bickle spotted the backdrop, he was left paralyzed with shock. When Mr. Bickle was finally able to regain his speech, he went on a long dramatic rant explaining in great length just how much he hated literally everything about the painting. Next, the audience is shown AJ unwrapping a present from Timmy for his birthday, a brand new computer. AJ is shocked, meanwhile Timmy is eagerly awaiting his praise for giving an incredible gift. While AJ is left speechless, Timmy tries to help him find the right words to describe his new computer. Amazing, outstanding, state-of-the-art, Timmy exclaims. But no, when AJ finally finds the right word, it wipes the joy right off of his face. AJ describes the computer as obsolete before dumping it outside his room, calling it a high-tech doorstop that doesn't work. The last thing the viewers are shown before moving on to the next scene is a sad Timmy Turner staring back at the rejected gift. Next, the viewers are taken outside where Timmy is working to tidy up the lawn. He complains that although his friends and family may be unappreciative, he's hoping that his parents will notice his hard work and show him some appreciation. Of course, if you're starting to notice a pattern, then you already know that his parents were not thrilled when they saw the lawn. Unfortunately for Timmy, the day he chose to do his good deed fell on the same day as Dimsdale's worst lawn competition, a terrible coincidence that ultimately resulted in Dinkelberg winning first prize. Fans of the show will realize the devastation and rage this caused for Timmy's dad. Meanwhile, Timmy's mom was enraged by the shrub sculpture of her because she felt the proportions were horribly wrong. So, once again, Timmy's good deed went unnoticed. Everything seems pretty normal for the show. So far, I have no complaints with the progression of the episode. Timmy is making a genuine attempt to help those around him. He's trying to be thoughtful and considerate. Perhaps for the wrong reason, but ultimately he's a child. He's still learning about life. So actually, this episode has a lot of potential to teach kids valuable lessons about resiliency, expectations, and of course doing acts of kindness out of the good of your heart, not to help yourself or make yourself feel better. Actually, one of the reasons I despise this episode is because it had a decent start. I genuinely believe that this episode had potential, but how the show writers decided to tackle the next series of events is why I devoted my time to reminding fans that this episode exists. I feel the individuals who missed this dumpster fire for whatever reason, as well as those who blocked the memory of this episode out of their minds, should be reminded or made aware of this atrocity that aired on Nickelodeon at the time. Timmy confides in his fairies, explaining how he's actually trying to do something good for once and no one seems to be appreciating his efforts. In an attempt to comfort Timmy, Wanda assures him that they appreciate him. Cosmo then decides to chime in, adding that if Timmy were to do something kind for them, like cleaning out their fishbowl, they would totally notice. A bit taken aback and somewhat agitated by Cosmo's remarks, Timmy exclaims that he just cleaned their fishbowl yesterday. Cosmo suddenly poofs the fishbowl over his head, snapping back to Timmy's claim with, "You call this clean?" proceeding to point out every spot that Timmy missed. Now, to be fair to Cosmo, the fishbowl still appeared to be filthy, but it's extremely inconsiderate to kick the poor boy when he's already down. Why pour salt into the wounds, especially after you were just comforting him because he was feeling unappreciated? It's a wild response, but Cosmo isn't really known to be a thoughtful, considerate, or even sane fairy, so perhaps it was fitting. Regardless, this happens to be the straw that broke the camel's back. Timmy, overwhelmed with emotions, makes a heartbreaking wish.
I wish I was never born!
Once again, the intention that drives his decision isn't really great. Immediately after making his wish, Timmy cheers, hoping that he'll look around and see that everyone's miserable. Now, sure, it's terrible that Timmy stated eagerly that it's time to see how miserable the world is without Timmy Turner, but he's a kid. I think he was looking for attention in the beginning, and then after all of his attempts were ignored or rejected, he questioned if those same people, or anyone, really cares about him. Seeing that people are miserable without him could give his life a sense of meaning and purpose. Yes, it's immature, but let's not forget Timmy is a kid, neglected by his parents, tormented by his babysitter, despised by his teacher, and here he is trying to do good as an attempt to receive some attention, yes, but truthfully, how many options does he really have at his disposal? Now he's at his wit's end, and he just wants to see that people actually need him, that without him in the world, life would be miserable. Sadly for Timmy, this was far from the truth. When Timmy turns around, he notices that his home was replaced with an extravagant mansion. He looks through the window to find his parents joyfully listing off their daughter Sophia's accomplishments. It appears that his parents, or former parents, are happier now that he's been removed from their lives. Just as this realization hits Timmy, Jorgen arrives to take Timmy to the dimension of kids who improved the world by wishing they were never born. Yeah, that's right. Jorgen just states flat out that Timmy's existence is ruining the lives of his friends, family, and community. Obviously, this surprises Timmy, and he's just unwilling to accept that people are happier without him. Timmy argues that somebody's life has to be worse, but Jorgen just doubles down, insisting that everyone's life is better now.
Let me save you some time. No, everyone's life is better.
Eventually, they reach an agreement that if Timmy can find one person whose life is worse without him, then he'll be allowed to undo his wish. So, Timmy thinks of Francis. Since his parents are off the table, the next person on Timmy's mind is someone he interacts with every day. Francis, a bully who seems to focus a lot of his energy on Timmy, must be miserable now that Timmy's not around. At least, that's what Timmy believed. So, Jorgen takes Timmy to see Francis. To Timmy's surprise, Francis was actually nice to him. Jorgen explained that without Timmy, Francis needed another outlet for his bullying, so he turned to football. Now he's the star quarterback, and after spending so much time outside, he actually developed a tan. Yeah, that's right. Without Timmy around, Francis is popular amongst his peers, happy, with a bright future ahead of him. Oh yeah, and he's not gray anymore. I'm sure that's comforting for Timmy. It would seem that even those who devote themselves to tormenting him are better off without him. Still, Timmy wasn't going to give up that easily. He believed that somebody had to be miserable without him. So Timmy thought about it and decided to visit Mr. Crocker next. As Timmy believes that proving he has fairies is basically Crocker's whole reason for existing. Eager to prove Timmy wrong, Jorgen takes Timmy to see Mr. Crocker. To Timmy's surprise, Crocker was well-dressed, seemingly put together, teaching a college class. Jorgen explained that without Timmy around to destroy Crocker's childhood, Crocker managed to become Harvard's most valuable professor. Even AJ is better off without Timmy, it would seem, as viewers are clearly shown AJ, who is the same age as Timmy, sitting in the very same class that Crocker is teaching. Jorgen points this out and states that without Timmy around dragging AJ down, AJ managed to graduate high school when he was just 9. That's actually pretty crazy, but the cherry on top would have to be AJ's full head of hair. It's a surprising change to AJ's character, and Timmy can't help but question how he's responsible for AJ being bald. A somewhat funny comment on the absurd situation Timmy has found himself in. Seeing what everyone's life would be like if he was never born and noticing that it's actually better in every way. Somehow, his existence managed to have a negative impact on everyone, affecting even minuscule things like whether or not AJ had a full head of hair. This is already a pretty crazy story for children. Well, for anyone, this would really be a heartbreaking series of events to live through. Realizing your life is a burden to those around you, being given a chance to see how beautiful the world would be without you, understanding that the people you love most will never truly be happy because you were born. Why would anyone believe that this would be a suitable story for children? Well, I actually think this episode has another lesson to teach its viewers. The real lesson this episode has to share with viewers is subtler than the lesson Jorgen teaches us about good deeds. The irony is that Mr. Crocker, Harvard's most valuable professor, literally wrote on his chalkboard the theme of the episode.
Existentialism!
Yeah, that's right. It's no coincidence that Mr. Crocker is teaching his class about existentialism. This is the show writers begging the viewers to dig deeper. So let's take a moment to explore this philosophical concept, starting with a clear definition. Oh, wait. That's right. Existentialism doesn't have a clear and universally agreed upon definition. Often, it references a cultural movement that flourished in Europe in the middle of the 20th century. There are, however, some themes that are generally associated with existentialism, such as alienation, absurdity, dread, nothingness, as well as some other categories that provide understanding for human existence. Questions like, what's the point to life? Does my life have intrinsic meaning? How should I live my life? So on and so forth, all fall into the realm of existentialism. We can broadly define existentialism by its interest in what it means and feels like to exist as a human in the world. Existentialism asks big questions about individual freedom, consciousness, and morality. Now, there are many that find the concept of existentialism to be harsh, pessimistic, saddening, and even maddening at times. Still, at least it's not nihilism. These two may get confused with one another from time to time, but it's important to remember that although both schools of philosophy may be saddening, nihilists believe that life is meaningless, while existentialists believe that life is fundamentally absurd, but individuals still have the capacity to find a sense of meaning in their existence. Concepts that may be a lot for younger individuals to fully comprehend, and I'm not saying this to be rude. This branch of philosophy is difficult for adults to fully digest. I mean, have you ever heard the term existential crisis? Yeah, that stems from existentialism. There's even a term called existential depression. While not an official form of depression listed in the DSM-5, existential depression is said to arise in individuals who confront certain basic issues of existence, such as death, freedom, isolation, and meaninglessness. All in all, at the end of the day, really, I know that after hearing a little about existentialism, I'm sure your first thought is, man, that's great material for a kid's show. Those little rugrats are sure to love this. I mean, who doesn't love a little existential dread to keep you company at night, huh? Who wants to sleep peacefully, am I right? Yeah, I'm really not sure why the show writers decided to explore this theme. I mean, it's crazy. They really created existentialism for kids. By the way, the viewers are never given clarity as to why AJ suddenly has hair, or why AJ being bald is Timmy's fault. It's pointed out as absurd, but unlike the other times when Timmy questions how he's responsible for this, and Jorgen happily explains how he's destroying everyone's lives, this time, he just ignores the comment, leaving the fact to stand alone in its absurdity. I believe this is another nod to the deeper concept this episode is exploring, as existentialists believe that life is fundamentally absurd. Okay, now back to the show. After briefly complaining that usually when there's a problem, it's Cosmo's fault, Timmy suddenly wants to see Cosmo, believing that Cosmo must be missing him. It's surprising Timmy didn't think of Wanda, as she seems to be genuinely concerned with his overall well-being. Still, it wouldn't have mattered either way, as Cosmo and Wanda are pleased with their new godchild, Chester. They even compliment his teeth and selfless personality, comparing Chester's delightful qualities with Timmy's less desirable traits. This leads me to believe that Cosmo and Wanda remember Timmy. It basically became undeniable after Cosmo said,
"And look at those perfect,
faceless, not goofy teeth! And no stupid pink hat to ruin his hair!
Yeah, that's right. Cosmo, in trying to highlight Chester's perfect teeth, makes multiple comments that reference Timmy. I mean, come on, goofy teeth, and then he just had to add the silly pink hat comment. I mean, that has to be Timmy, right? It really makes the viewers question if Timmy's fairies even like him. I mean, even Wanda chimed in, adding how Chester is selfless and chooses to wish for others. And this comment should stand out to fans since Wanda is often annoyed with Timmy's selfishness and senseless wishes. As a child, this was difficult to watch. Being an avid viewer of the show, I was already aware of the carelessness of his parents as well as the tragedy of Mr. Crocker's past, which, yes, is very clearly Timmy's fault, so that was no surprise. However, witnessing Cosmo and Wanda with a new godchild while still possessing memories of Timmy was surprising. Then to see them casually making comments that highlight Timmy's insecurities, well, that was just devastating. I suppose it's no surprise to hear this from Cosmo, but it was shocking to hear this from Wanda. It's understandable that caring for Timmy was bound to be stressful at times, and more often than not, Wanda was left with the short end of the stick. Still, fans of the show are shown worse godchildren. Even Cosmo and Wanda had some troublesome children in the past. So, Timmy isn't some monster. He has his faults, but he's a kid. Cosmo and Wanda have spent years with Timmy. They know him, good and bad. They even have a room in their castle that's adorned with images of Timmy. So yes, I believed Cosmo and Wanda cared for Timmy, or at least had enough respect for him to not make fun of him behind his back. And clearly I was wrong. Anyways, while Cosmo, Wanda, and Jorgen continue their praise of Chester, Timmy sarcastically shouts,
"What next? I suppose Vicky is a nice babysitter now?"
This prompts Jorgen to take Timmy to see Vicky, and shockingly, she's not a babysitter anymore. Apparently, without Timmy around, Vicky needed to change careers. Viewers of the show already know that Vicky was a babysitter before Timmy was born though, so why is it that she felt the need to pursue something new? I suppose it could be that the other parents in Dimsdale don't feel the need to abandon their kids on a daily basis. Honestly, the Turners were basically Vicky's cash cow. Considering how money-hungry she is, I guess it makes sense for her to switch careers. Surprisingly choosing a career that prevents pain? So I guess Vicky's sadistic kick was just for Timmy? Who knows? She's probably tormenting her sister and parents. I just can't believe she's genuinely nice. Regardless, now Vicky works for Dr. Bender as his laughing gas assistant. After seeing this, Timmy finally calls it quits. Seemingly defeated, Timmy asserts that he'll go with Jorgen, permanently erasing him from existence, but not before grabbing a tank of laughing gas. Despite Timmy stating that he was done seeing how happy people were without him around, Jorgen just wasn't done tearing Timmy down. Jorgen questions if Timmy is positive he's ready to call it quits, taunting him with images of people in his life who are also better off without him around. Like Elmer without his Boyle, Mr. Bickle's musical production of Waterworld, and even the series champion Chicago Cubs, which I'm not sure at all how that relates to Timmy, but regardless, Timmy isn't interested. Melancholy lingers on his face as he states once again that he's done. Jorgen won, and he's accepted the burdensome reality of his existence. This seemed to please Jorgen as he delightfully cheers, "Goodbye, Timmy Turner, forever!" Using his wand, Jorgen splits the earth, revealing a lake of flames. Next, an image that has been seared into my brain, the viewers are shown Timmy falling to his certain death. What an ending, am I right? Well, thankfully, that's not where this story ends. Using the tank of laughing gas he stole from Dr. Bender, Timmy propels himself to safety. Then, he uses the tank of laughing gas to defeat Jorgen. Stealing Jorgen's wand, Timmy begins to undo his wish, returning things back to normal. Middle-class parents, bully Francis, so on and so forth. He was about to succeed when, suddenly, Timmy questioned if his life was worth the happiness of his friends, family, and community. Obviously, Timmy wants to live. I mean, he was just fighting for his life, but now he's ready to say goodbye, for real this time. Timmy returns the wand to Jorgen, no longer willing to fight for a life that's unwanted. After a moment of silence, Jorgen announces that Timmy has passed the test. Confused and frustrated, Timmy asked Jorgen to explain what's going on. Jorgen explains that he was aware of Timmy feeling unappreciated as a result of no one noticing his good deeds. Jorgen tells Timmy that he shouldn't do good deeds to receive attention. He should do them simply because it's the right thing to do. So, Jorgen states,
by not wishing yourself back into existence and ruining everyone's lives. You did the goodest deed of all!
Yeah, so Timmy gets to return to his life before he made his wish, in his yard with Cosmo and Wanda. Timmy is thrilled to see his fairies, though they have no memories of his wish, so they're not exactly sure why Timmy is so happy to see them. Timmy helps Cosmo get the fishbowl off his head, and Cosmo thanks him, adding that the fishbowl is actually really dirty and he should clean it sometime. Timmy stands ready to chuck the fishbowl at Cosmo for his insensitivity, but instead, Timmy tells Cosmo that he'll actually do that right now. The episode ends with Cosmo and Wanda wondering if Timmy learned a big life lesson without them. Cosmo adds that maybe it would just be better if they were never born. Suddenly, Jorgen appears to tell Cosmo not to get his hopes up. Yeah, this episode was crazy. As I said, the basic lesson the show writers are trying to present to kids isn't bad. Timmy is generally a selfish character, not a great role model for kids, so this episode did have potential to instill a good life lesson into the minds of their young viewers. Tragically, this episode likely instilled a mixture of anxiety and uncertainty. Sure, it's wonderful to encourage kids, or really anyone, to think deeply about what it means to be alive. Although this is a children's show, I see no issue with exploring tragedies of life in a story to help kids process their emotions. This was not that, though. Oh no. This was encouraging children to think about the worth of their existence, as well as the burden it may impose onto others. Yes, the ending fits with the theme of existentialism too, as existentialists believe that it's up to the individual to find meaning in their lives. Yeah, whoever came up with the idea of existentialism for kids, I hope you were fired. This episode was a disgrace and should have never aired on Nickelodeon. Those are just my thoughts though. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Until next time, I hope you had a wonderful day or night. Okay, well, goodbye. P.S. Please like the video, subscribe, and comment a star emoji if you want to see more cartoon reviews.